Broncos country, the silence is officially broken as the Denver Broncos had made a trade with the Miami Dolphins to acquire wide receiver Jaylen Waddle. Now, these are my full and complete thoughts on the trade. This is my opinion solely. If you see things differently, if you disagree with anything I say, that's fine. These are just my personal opinions. This is what I personally think of the trade. And man, I really, really love this trade. So yeah, if you do enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you are brand new. Thank you all so much for watching. Let's jump straight into this video. So starting off with the trade details, to the Broncos, we get wide receiver Jaylen Waddle, obviously, as well as a 2026 fourth round pick. And to the Miami Dolphins, we sent our first round pick, which is 30th overall. We sent our third round pick, and we also send a fourth round pick to the Miami Dolphins. So actually, the fourth round picks are going to kind of cancel each other out, right? We are essentially getting a better fourth round pick, right? So we had the Saints fourth round pick, which is really early in the fourth round. We're also getting the Dolphins fourth round pick, which is also early in the fourth round. In exchange, we're giving away our 30th pick in the fourth round. So those cancel out. We're upgrading at the fourth round. It's essentially a pick swap, right? But we're upgrading our fourth round pick. So for Jaylen Waddle, we send a first round pick as well as a third round pick to Jaylen Waddle. And it's essentially like using our first round pick on Jaylen Waddle because let's be honest, the talent that's going to be there at pick 30, it's not the same level of Jaylen Waddle right now, right? So you're taking a gamble of using pick number 30 to find an explosive playmaker for Bo Nix. So you're essentially using your 30th overall pick for Jaylen Waddle. And I like Denzel Boston. I like Omar Cooper if he was going to be there. But to be honest, Jaylen Waddle was kind of my guy, right? At the trade deadline, I said, this is the player who I want the Broncos to trade for. Sounded like there was a little bit of talks going on, but that never materialized. But it got done. The Broncos and the Dolphins have been talking, and we finally break radio silence in free agency to get wide receiver Jaylen Waddle. Now, a couple of caveats. Obviously, Waddle is going to be older than the draft prospects, right? But he is still only 27 years old, so he's on the right side of 30, and I really like Jaylen Waddle as a player. The thing about it, though, is the contract. He's obviously going to be on a more expensive contract than a rookie would be on, as well as you have less term and don't have a fifth-year option. But to me, that's fine. If you're trading a first-round pick and a third-round pick for Jaylen Waddle, you expect him to be in Denver long-term. So I do expect Jaylen Waddle to probably re-sign a contract with the Broncos. But that's down the road. That's after his 3 years are done. I do expect a restructure with the current money that he's going to get count against the cap. So I would expect a restructure, not necessarily this season, but for next season and the following season as well. But I really like this addition to the Broncos. For me, let's talk about Jaylen Waddle, right? He's obviously one of the faster receivers in the NFL, and he kind of provides this explosive weapon that we didn't have, this guy who can separate and just get open for the Broncos, right? Let's be honest, we really didn't have that over the past few playoff runs. So Jaylen Waddle provides a skill set that I think was lacking in this Broncos offense, definitely. You look at the 5 seasons he's played in 78 regular season games, right? There's been a lot of concern, or there's been a lot of talk that, oh, the Broncos traded all this for a guy who gets injured. I really don't get the injury concern. He's played in a majority of the games that he's been eligible for. If you want to bring that up as a concern, you can, but not really a concern for me, right? 373 receptions, have 544 targets for 5,039 yards, averaging 13.5 yards per reception, and 26 touchdowns. Now, the past few seasons, he hasn't gotten to 1,000 yards quite, but he's also been playing with Tyreek Hill and a regressing Tua. So I'm expecting when Jaylen Waddle comes into this offense, I do expect him to be the wide receiver 1, right? He was the wide receiver 2 in Miami with Tyreek Hill there. But in my opinion, I think Jaylen Waddle takes over as the wide receiver 1. Maybe you see things differently. Maybe you see him as a 1A and Sutton as a 1B. But for me, Jaylen Waddle is the wide receiver 1 for this team. And I do expect him to get a lot of targets to get back to that 1,000-yard mark for the Broncos. Now, that kind of leads us to our next segment of where does he fit onto the Broncos where does he fit into the wide receiver room? For me, Jaylen Waddle is the wide receiver 1 with Sutton as the 2, and then how else do you want to play it? Marvin Mims, I really like when we get the ball in his hands. I like Troy Franklin, has those up and down type of moments. You got Pat Bryant, who was the most sure-handed receiver on the team, just obviously dealt with the concussions last season. Little Jordan Humphrey is mostly a blocking receiver, and then Michael Bandy is going to be someone who you could have on the active roster, but most likely will be a practice squad. And if you need to elevate him from the practice squad for a few games, that's going to be his type of role. But for me, I absolutely see Jaylen Waddle as the wide receiver one on this team. So what does it look like? Here is what the offense looks like following the Jaylen Waddle trade. You have Garrett Bowles, Ben Powers, Luke Wattenberg, Quinn Miners, and Mike McGlinchey. That is your starting offensive line. Of course, Bo Nix at the quarterback position. Evan Ingram in that tight end room. Still hoping we decide to add someone else to that offensive or to that tight end room. I'm hoping Evan Ingram takes another step. I think he has that ability. I want to get him more involved in this offense. And then you look at the wide receivers. Jaylen Waddle is your one, Sutton as your two, and then you can kind of put whoever you want there at your slot receiver at number 3. Sean Payton rotates those guys a ton. Right now, it's currently listed as Troy Franklin being the slot receiver, but you could easily have Marvin Mims there. You could have Pat Bryant there, right? So you have a bunch of different options to play at that slot position if you want them to. You have Marvin Mims, who you can move to a gadget type of role, right? Lining him up as a running back, use him on jet sweeps, all of that type of stuff. But he's not the only one who can make those type of plays now. Jaylen Waddle could absolutely take a jet sweep if you wanted him to with his speed, right? Again, one of the fastest wide receivers in the entire NFL. So to me, I love this move. He's been one of my favorite players to watch in the entire NFL outside of the Denver Broncos. I just think he's so much fun to watch, especially with that Waddle celebration, right? So might have to get a jersey, honestly. Love wearing my Bo Nix jersey, but I might have to get a Jaylen Waddle jersey. He is going to bring another element to this offense that was honestly lacking and that we didn't have prior. And then, of course, you look at the running back room, which you got J.K. Dobbins, right? I like J.K. Dobbins. It's just the injury concern. Hopefully he can beat the injury odds this season. R.J. Harvey is a receiving back, but then you got Jaleel McLaughlin, who when Dobbins went down and he had to take over as a running back, he honestly played really well with R.J. Harvey. Tyler Bidet, more of a pass-protecting running back. And then, of course, you have Adam Prentice as a fullback. But this is what the offense kind of looks like. I just wanted to go over a quick little video discussing my thoughts on Jaylen Waddle. Maybe I forgot to mention something that when I'm looking back and editing this, I'm going to kick myself for not mentioning. But yeah, I love this move for the Broncos. Where do we look in the draft now? I would say, obviously, we don't have our first round pick. We don't have number 30 anymore, and that's perfectly fine with me. You don't have your third round pick either. You're going to have a second, 2 fourths, a fifth, no sixth, and 3 sevenths. So for me, early, I'm looking at what running backs are there at pick 62. I'm a big Jonah Coleman guy, so I'm kind of looking at that area. You look at the linebackers that are going to be available. I'm really liking Anthony Hill and Taurine York. Those are kind of my 3 guys after doing an initial deep dive after the Broncos obviously made this trade and kind of just looking at who's going to be available at pick 62. That's kind of what I'm looking at right now. Those are my 3 guys. Again, things could change when I fully jump in deep and do a mock draft, which I want to get a mock draft out very, very soon. I initially planned on recording a mock draft and did record a mock draft last night due to the lack of moves. And I was going to wait to edit it and upload it today. But obviously this news dropped, so I had to drop all the plans and change those plans, which is perfectly fine. So yeah, Jaylen Waddle is a Bronco. Should mention it is pending a physical, and after the Max Crosby news, that feels noteworthy to mention. But yeah, I do expect that to get done, and Jaylen Waddle is added to the room. I guess one other thing is this kind of goes against Sean Payton's typical, what he typically likes for a wide receiver, right? You have Courtland Sutton, who's a big receiver. You got little Jordan Humphrey's a big receiver. Pat Bryant's a big receiver. Troy Franklin is fairly big in terms of his stature. I believe he's, 6'1". Jaylen Waddle is, 5'10", I think. Marvin Mims, another short receiver, but you also think about Devon Vele, who Sean Payton drafted. So kind of bucks the trend a little bit of what Sean Payton typically likes at wide receiver, but again, he just brings a different element to this offense. So I really, really like this trade for the Broncos. Was it an overpay? Some people say yes, and that's fine if you agree with them. I'm fine with the compensation that we gave up for Jaylen Waddle. Really like him as a player. Wanted him at the trade deadline. And then if we were going to make a trade, he's one of the guys who I wanted to go after because I wasn't a big fan of the free agent market at the wide receiver position. And then there's other names floated around, right? A.J. Brown was out there. There were some other guys, but Jaylen Waddle, in my opinion, he was my preference, right? He was the guy who I wanted to be a Bronco, and he is a Bronco. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are on this trade in the comment section below. Make sure you leave a like if you did enjoy this video and subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.